Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Eating the Elephant, where we talk to you about Hurricane Michael recovery, and we break down the elephant that is that recovery into bite-sized pieces. We talk about general recovery topics. We talk about insurance, most particularly insurance. And I know we missed Sunday. We quit for Easter, which of course was natural. You guys had a lot better things to do than listen to me. But there's certainly been a lot going on this week, and we got a lot of ground to cover pretty quickly. First of all, of course, the big news this week is we were reclassified as a Category 5. Michael is one of very few Cat 5 storms to hit, and it caught us right in the teeth. I think everybody had a general feeling that it was a Category 5, but I do think while it doesn't change deductibles, it doesn't change FEMA funding, I think everybody sort of it feels a little bit acknowledged now. And I do think it gives our elected officials a little bit more ammunition when we're going either to Tallahassee or, more importantly, to Washington to look for funding to help us, because I think we all know we all feel sort of abandoned, and this has been called the forgotten storm, and I think for very good reason. It just doesn't seem like anybody's paying us any attention, either in Washington and not even much attention in Tallahassee. So I hope that everyone that is part of that world will continue to press our case. I do have a pretty good bit of faith in people like Representative Neil Dunn, and I hope that they will continue to press the case and they will continue to work for more funding for us. What we do need to remember is the recategorization of Michael to a Category 5 storm does not by itself change anything. It gives us a very twisted, very weird badge of honor. We can all say, now that we've survived a Cat 5 storm, it's not something I want to have to repeat. I would rather not have this badge of honor, frankly, but it is what it is. And so now we can go forward kind of all on the same page, that we all know that we survived a Cat 5 storm, one of the most significant in U.S. history, frankly. I had a couple of meetings with folks this week that are normally sitting on the opposite side of the house from me. On the other side of the desk from me. People like appraisers, public adjusters, attorneys. And I did learn some things that I wanted to pass on, and I made some promises to do so, I think, this week. One is I have been very reluctant to advise clients to go to appraisal. Appraisal functionally is binding, not fully, but I think most people would agree that the idea is everybody comes to the same number and signs off. And the question becomes, I think, when to invoke appraisal, and when is a good idea for you as a client, as a homeowner, as a claimant, to invoke the appraisal clause of your insurance company. If you're not familiar with this, there is a clause in your insurance policy that says essentially that if you and the insurance company disagree on the amount of your loss, and there is certainly a ton of that going on these days, that your insurance company gets an appraiser, you get an appraiser, and if need be, they get a referee. And what happens is your appraiser and the insurance company's appraisers come up to a number. And a referee is kind of a neutral party between the two of them as a mediator, gets them to come to the same number somehow. I'm not familiar on the inside of the negotiating process when it comes to insurance claims. I've been involved in very many mediation cases, and the objective of mediation is not even to be fair. It is simply to get the two parties to agree to the same number. And that is the reason I've always been very reticent to have clients look at appraisal, because if it's not the right number, if it's just a number you agree on, but it's still not enough money to fix your home the way it should be fixed, then that's not the right selection for you. I have had some good advice recently, and it's something that I really hadn't considered. There's two things that you need to look at with appraisal: is the timing of invoking appraisal, and you can basically throw that flag anytime you want. Sort of the ideal timing, as I've been explained, and I can't say that I have a lot of knowledge of this, but what has been told to me does make very good intellectual sense to me, and I'm going to get some more information, and of course I'll post it on Facebook. The time to invoke it, the best time, it seems to be right there at the second appraisal or the second assessment. If you have had an adjuster out and then you've had a second adjuster out maybe to meet with you, right at that point, particularly if you're with a PA or somebody like that, I think that's the time to move. That makes good sense to me, because if the second adjuster has been out and they still don't see it the way you see it, then it doesn't seem like you're going to come to the same number. I will say this: I think the appropriate use of appraisal is when you disagree on amounts. If a contractor tells you it's going to be $100,000 to fix your home, and the insurance company somehow seems to think you can do it for $50,000, that's a good candidate potentially for the appraisal process. What is not a good candidate for the appraisal process is when you are looking at coverage issues. If you are thinking something should be covered and your insurance company thinks otherwise. If there is a coverage issue, that is probably more appropriate for an attorney, not a public adjuster, an attorney, because that becomes a matter of contract law, and that's something that an attorney is going to be the most effective at helping you with. Another piece of advice I got from the people I've been talking with this week is something that I had thought, but I was glad to have confirmed. Everybody's heard the term speed kills. It's usually used in terms of driving, but I think excessive speed in this process for you is probably a bad idea. I don't mean that I think insurance companies are moving too fast. Certainly not. That is not the case. What I do think is in some cases, homeowners and business owners are moving too quickly, not in the recovery phase, but in the decision-making phase. And by that I mean this. If you sort of came into the insurance process maybe right after the storm, chances are if you hired a contractor to cut down trees on October 11th or 12th, you paid twice what somebody paid 2 or 3 weeks later. So doing it immediately after the storm in a great big hurry probably wasn't your best decision. I think if you could spend a little more time, be a little more retrospective, and take your time to make those decisions, I think that's great. I think implementing those decisions you should do very quickly. Once you've made a decision, then you go ahead and you pull the trigger and you go. You play offense, as I've said, not defense. You need to move, and you need to move with purpose. The whole idea is to keep forward momentum in this process. If you feel like you get stuck in neutral, as quickly as you can get out, but get out with purpose and get out with an idea in mind and an end goal in mind. Thoughtful is the word I would use. If you can slow down just a little bit, your thought processes tend to work a little bit better. I'm one of those people that if I'm faced with a big decision, I tend to sleep on it, and sleep tends to sort of clear my mind. And the next morning I tend to make better decisions than if I just snap off and make that decision that same day. I learned a new term that I thought I'd share with you guys because I think it's something that you need to be aware of, and it's a settlement farm. This was spoken to me in terms of public adjusters and attorneys, primarily attorneys. And a settlement farm, as I understand it, is a law firm that really has no interest in going to court. I think this is a very, very tiny minority. I want to be very clear on that. But I hope what you can do is you can recognize them when you see them, because a law firm that isn't willing to go to court, that talks about going to court and talks with a great deal of bluster, isn't the law firm for you. If you need a law firm now, you don't need a settlement farm. And the problem that I was given to do with settlement farms, which is something completely new to me, is law firms talk a great deal about getting their legal fees in excess of your claim, in excess of the money that you're awarded, and that's absolutely true. And that's something that I've been generally in favor of law firms over public adjusters who take a percentage. What it didn't occur to me, and what has been sort of taught to me over this past week or so, is that when a law firm goes in and negotiates with the other side, they're negotiating not just for you, but they're negotiating for them as well. And that can set up a conflict of interest for a law firm that maybe doesn't have the kind of ethics that one would expect. Again, a tiny, tiny fraction, I think, of the law firms out there, but it certainly doesn't matter to them, to an unethical firm, I would say, that if you get 10% above what you're asking or 80% above what you're asking, and they get the same fee, then it really doesn't matter to them. So their interests may not align with yours. The reason I say this is not to accuse law firms of bad behavior, but it's to make sure, where you can, to make sure that the law firm's interests align with yours as much as possible. I do want to say one thing that's a little bit inside baseball. I've talked about assignment of benefits a lot. I've been very critical of assignment of benefits and the abuse that comes along with them, and I wanted to let you know. It's a little bit of a hollow victory for those of us here in Hurricane Michael, but I will say this. Assignment of benefits mostly got fixed today. There's a bill that has passed the House and the Senate. It's on the way to Governor DeSantis' desk, and it will fix most of the problems to do with assignment of benefits. Well, there are flaws in the legislation. I think in particular there's a $3,000 limit that shouldn't be there for emergency repairs, and I think that's something that I hope we will come back and fix in the next legislative session. The other thing it won't fix is it won't fix outright fraud by mitigation contractors and restoration contractors. And what I think we need to do moving forward is, and I hope as a second sort of step to this, is we will license those mitigation contractors, because the problem is there's no one right now looking over their shoulder. It takes no special skill to go in and tear out drywall and to dry out a home. So there is no mechanism to control those contractors like there is like a licensed roofer, electrician, or someone such as that. So I think that's very important, and I hope we can follow up and get that accountability later in the process. I'm very pleased to see this happen. You are going to see an awful lot of negativity about this legislation, and you're going to hear an awful lot from the other side about how this is going to rip off homeowners, and after the next storm, no contractors will come to work in Florida. And frankly, it's all bluster, it's all noise, and almost none of it's true. Prior to 2012, we didn't have this problem in Florida, and we had plenty of contractors in Florida that have helped us recover from how many hurricanes? How many hurricanes have we had in the state of Florida prior to 2012? Well, we've had tons. 2004 and 2005, we had them crisscrossing the middle of the state like they were coming off a runway. So we've had plenty of contractors working here. We had AOB legislation and an AOB process. It was like no other state in the United States. We finally fixed it. So you may hear a little bit of Chicken Little panic. Don't listen to it. Don't worry about it. Things are actually better than they were, or they will be. The only unfortunate part of it is it will not help victims of Hurricane Michael as a rule. I would like to say this. I've recognized that everybody is getting really, really tired. We're seeing shorter fuses. We're seeing more fatigue. We're seeing people flat, just worn out. I've seen it in my own office, out of my own staff. I've seen it in our clientele. We've seen it in contractors. We've seen it in everybody. It's 6 months. Everybody is tired. What I will say is that we have just gone through Easter, and Easter is a time of renewal. And I think the promise of Easter is that things do get better. I will repeat something that was said to me on Sunday, is that Easter does not guarantee it will be the same. As a matter of fact, the promise of Easter is that things will never be the same again. So let's realize going forward, things are not going to be the same as they were on October 9th. They could be better, and it's up to us as to whether they're going to be better or worse. So I would challenge you, even as tired as you are, do what you can to do some self-care, but then let's get back to work and let's get our community back where it should be, realizing it's going to take a long, long time. I know everybody has said it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. I think we're finally realizing what that really means, that it is very, very significant. It is going to take a long time. 6 months seems like a flash. It seems like it happened just yesterday, and we're coming up on hurricane season in another couple of months. So everybody dig your heels in, lean forward, lean into the problem, and let's get Bay County and Northwest Florida back where it needs to be. Thanks for staying with us tonight for probably a little bit longer session than normal, and we'll see you, of course, on Sunday as usual.